Hello everyone and welcome to what is now my morning routine. Having a quick walk around the pond and getting to know what's really here, really getting to understand the life that is in and around this body of water. And I know that is a very lucky morning routine. But as you can see, it's misty and it's cold, and it is properly cold. The last 2 or 3 nights have been genuine winter nights here. We're in a bit of a valley, so it feels at least 2 or 3 degrees colder than up the road. Now in the lake, on these morning laps, I've got to think of a name for them, the carp seem to sink down to the bottom and stay out the way until it gets a bit warmer. But there's a lot else going on. I hope on this mic you can hear some of the bird life, but the thing that surprised me most, you've got your normal stuff, we've got a million carrion crows, and your robins, we've got some chaffinch, etc. But what I can't get over is the amount of goldcrest. There are dozens of them here, particularly, and they seem to enjoy these taller trees on the other side. I can't get any good footage of them yet because they tend to be right at the top and usually straight into the light. But this weekend, we're going to start bringing some feeders down and seeing what we can attract. So the bird life is very surprising. There's 2 or 3 jays at least. Seems to be one pair dominating and then one that's coming in for some of the acorns that have fallen to the floor, with the sparrowhawks, the buzzards, the red kites, and a few others. No peregrine yet, although I know there's peregrine in the fields that are around this property, but I haven't seen one as of yet. But it's a cacophony of birdsong. There's song thrush, missel thrush, and hopefully 1 or 2 other birds that you associate with winter in places like this. But I'm just waiting to see how it all develops. I'm also keeping an eye out for my sturgeon, which we put in here. I want to make sure he hasn't been taken by the heron, which I have been chasing off. I know it's all part of the natural world, etc, etc, etc. But I'm very fond of my sturgeon, who goes by Nicola. And I want to make sure he gets big enough so that the heron can't get him. I tried to get a European or a Eurasian sturgeon to put in here, but unfortunately they are, you can't buy them in the UK. There aren't really any left in the wild. They're what's considered to be locally extinct. This way is blocked by some brambling. I'll go back the other way. So what we got was a white-lined dwarf sturgeon. Now, the white-lined refers to a white edge around the fish. It's very pretty, actually. So the one nice thing is you can see him a bit better. The drawback is I think the herons can see him a bit better, because they seem very, very interested in the lake at the moment since I put him in there. But dwarf sturgeon, you're probably thinking, is a tiny little thing like that. He was about 10, maybe 11 inches when I put him in. And I said to the chap at the fish farm, it's about a, 60 metre long pond, 15, 20 metres wide, 4 or 5 foot in the middle, and, a bit of weed, bit of gravel at one end. How big will he get if he's a dwarf sturgeon? And he seems to think that in a pond like this, with a flow, he should get up to about 1.5 meters, max. But in the right conditions, with more of a flow, with a bigger body of water, the dwarf sturgeon could be 10 feet. So I'm really hoping he doesn't get to 10 feet, otherwise we'll have to find a new home for him. But 1.5 meters should be what we're expecting. But as you can see from these, very pretty fish. Very interesting looking. He's kind of like a pond shark. But when he's around, you can see him, because they do swim. They're on the move, unlike the carp, which kind of float around. And because he's the white-lined sturgeon, you do see him through the water, which seems to be varying depending on the weather from really, really clear to quite murky. But when it's clear, it is clear, which is one of the characteristics that our Kingfisher has been enjoying. Now, I should also mention that we are very, very fond of Kingfishers and how lucky we are to have one in our front garden. So at the fish farm, when I got Mr. Sturgeon, when I got Nicola, who was about 40 quid, we got 75 stickleback. And the idea there is to make sure that through the winter into spring, summer, there's enough of those stickleback left that they're starting to develop their own population, they're starting to breed. And every time Mr. Kingfisher comes and sits on this post, which is his favourite, there's at least something for him to see. You know, there's something for him to think, oh, this is a good place for lunch. I'll come back here. But I think, and I'm going to put some... Oh, sorry, Mr. Moorhen, we scared you there. We're going to put some cameras up in this bit of ancient woodland up here, because that's where I think he's nesting or he stays, you know, because he'll come through here, cheep, 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 as kingfishers do before they land or before they get home to their burrow, and then head in there. And there's steep-sided mud banks on either side of a little creek. So we'll have to see where he lives exactly, because that might present some really interesting photographic opportunities. But this is where the heron is sitting at this end, which is very annoying. Now I'm hoping that it's very shallow here with the leaf litter, which will eventually come out, but it's very shallow. I'm hoping it's too shallow and not attractive for Nicola the sturgeon, so he won't have got him. Or I'm being hopeful and optimistic anyway. But it is nice to just come out here and listen to all the birds. The best thing that Merlin has picked up, I haven't seen, and it could be a mistake, by all means, could be a mistake. It's not infallible, as good as Merlin is, was a bullfinch. Because it'd be great to have bullfinch down here, as it's a wonderful looking bird, but you just don't see them anymore. I mean, the last time I see about one a winter, and it's never anywhere near where I live, in Kent. So it would be great to have them down here, but hopefully as we get the feeders, we're going to do a whole section of the garden that is just rammed with feeders and things for the birds. So it'll become much easier to actually monitor what is here as they start coming down and feeling comfortable. And there's no cats here, so they should get really comfortable, really happy with that feeder section. And we can see, but I can't pick up Nicola in the shallows. Doesn't mean he's dead. Doesn't mean he's been taken by the heron. Just means I can't see him. Well, there we are. There's my morning lap. I hope you've enjoyed seeing what I get to see on a regular basis. I'm going to bring as much of it to you as possible, because I think when you've got something like this, when you're lucky enough to have this in your garden, you've got a duty not only to make it as wildlife friendly, but to share it. So bear with me, I'm still remembering how to do video and audio, but stay tuned and thank you for watching. See you next time.